Imagine this, 17 or 18 years old, about to graduate high school with big plans to move to your dream college or any college away from your hometown. You're so excited to move out and be on your own. You can't wait. But has anyone talked to you about moving in that little or large adjustment period of leaving a familiar setting and heading out on your own in a completely new place that you're unfamiliar with? The first thing I did was immediately wring my hands together and worry. Worry about making friends and worry about finding a new balance. I also worried about never figuring out where things were and always having to use a map and looking dumb. I worried and worried for months leading up to my departure. Come late August, I make the long 5.5-hour drive with my mom sitting next to me and my dad in his truck, which was packed full of things for my new living space. We arrived in Lubbock and I was speechless. I made it. We were finally there. Once I had unpacked and my parents took me to Walmart to get the last few things I needed, they kissed me on the head, handed me some cash, hopped in their truck, and took off back for Wiley. The first thing I noticed about being in Lubbock is that what you see, that's what you get. And what I mean by that is that in my hometown, I'm surrounded by other cities that are as highly populated as Wiley and as developed. Another thing to note about Wiley is that it's a fast-paced life. People are always in a rush to nowhere, but everywhere. And we can drive around for 20 minutes and be 2 or 3 towns over. In Lubbock, you get Lubbock and whatever they have here in town, because there aren't many neighboring towns that are developed enough for constant guest appearances. Lubbock is the main event. I don't see that as a bad thing. But whenever someone is used to a metroplex, it's quite hard to adjust to a smaller, standalone city. My favorite thing about Lubbock was that it was calm. No one was ever in a rush to go anywhere. Ever. After I got over not having city after city to gallivant through, I started to worry about how to find my way around. It's smaller than Dallas, but that doesn't mean it's tiny. I decided to start around campus. I walked around the parts of campus I thought I would recognize, and I didn't, and I seemed to wander around aimlessly, forever. After I felt that I knew my way around at least a tiny bit, I worried about the next thing. Friends. Yes, I'm talkative. Yes, I'm outgoing. But making brand new friends? I'm not so sure about that. Looking into the future by about 3 or 4 weeks, I found my group of friends. We started with a humongous group, but we dwindled to about 5 of us. We would later on call ourselves the Forever 5, and we still do. And we hang out constantly, eventually living in an apartment together. The very next year. That's this year. Now that I've shared my adjustment period, which was smaller than I expected, I'm going to tell you about a few other students' adjustments to Lubbock from their hometowns. These are going to be a little more basic than mine, but they're going to be structured around the following questions. 1, where are you from and what was it like living there? 2, how was adjusting to the city itself? Was it difficult to be further from anything you knew, and were you excited to be away from all that you were familiar with? 3, how long do you think it took to adjust to Lubbock? And 4, was that time frame big or small to you? When I asked the questions, I got answers on both sides of the spectrum for adjustment and quite scattered across the state. My first person, Sydney, is from Dallas, the heart of it. And for her, it was quite hard to adjust to somewhere in the middle of nowhere, since in Dallas, there's a lot to do all over the city with her friends and family, plus an enormous state fair. She explained that moving was very off-putting at first because she had to research a completely different environment and had to learn what there was to do around town, which ended up not being much. When she moved into her dorm, she stayed cooped up in her room for quite a bit because she was intimidated by the idea of having to make a bunch of friends. Overall, her adjustment period was about a month or 2, which she felt that was a short amount of time since she finally found a group of friends and time started to fly. The next person I interviewed, Mitchell, is from the Woodlands, which is a suburban city surrounding Houston. Mitchell was not the biggest fan of Houston and his home because he was constantly surrounded by wealthy, snobby people. There wasn't much to do except going to the big mall in town. But moving for him was very great. The environment was completely different, and he enjoyed how low-key and in the middle of nowhere Lubbock was. He was excited to be away from people and places he was familiar with. His adjustment period was about a week, which was a very small amount of time, but he said it was because he was so filled with excitement when he came to Lubbock that he just fully embraced his move. After just these 2 interviews, we can definitely see that different people have vastly different feelings towards being away from home and adjusting to such a different environment. Both are adjusted. It just took Sydney a little bit longer than Mitchell. Next, we've got Noah. He's from the Fort Worth area, and his biggest note from home was that he grew up around a lot of unorganized streets and highways, with everything being spread out. He said it was slightly country, being Fort Worth and all. And when he moved, he liked it. Everything was a little bit closer together, and he liked the grid-like streets and how organized it was. He did note that it was very easy to learn, and he had no difficulties leaving his hometown. It was just different, and he liked being more independent. Like Mitchell, he only took about a week or 2, but his reasoning was that he just felt naturally comfortable in Lubbock. And the last person I interviewed, Nathan, is from Abilene. It's a smaller town that felt like Lubbock to him since he's not a very active member of the community. His words, not mine. He adjusted quite easily because his agenda is work, school, work, school, work, school, and so on. It was also easier for him to get acquainted with the streets of Lubbock because he used to work on the other side of town and would take random ways back to campus and try to just figure out how to get back. He said that he adjusted pretty instantaneously, about a minute or 2. Again, his words, not mine. After interviewing these 4 people, I was amazed that some had similarities but came to their conclusive statements in very different ways.